Hi, I'm Suresh Venkat. This is FaceTime with Rohit Kapoor, Vice Chairman and CEO, EXL Service. Mr. Kapoor, welcome to the chat.
Thank you.
Let's start off with the first question around the idea of crafting the digital enterprise. Amara's law of technology says, and I quote, "We tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run." By and large, I'm talking about non-tech companies. What tech challenges are they overestimating now or underestimating now, and what are they likely to reverse their stand on?
Well, I think that law is pretty accurate. I think it makes sense because we ourselves are a transformation and a business process management company. We look at technologies that are shaping our customers' world, and we think we understand the impact of that fairly well. But there are a number of nuances that you tend to miss out, particularly as you think about the evolution over a longer period of time. Today, everything is moving into much more real-time information, and therefore all the systems are being geared towards trying to establish information and sensors that can pick up these signals on a real-time basis. But when you think about progression and evolution, those are longer-term trends, and sometimes for the short-term signals, you miss out what's going to happen in the long-term trend. And that's something which you need to watch out for.
Let's talk about one of the other themes at the Nasscom ILF this year, what's called the SMAC, the Social Mobile Analytics and Cloud. Let's start with social first. Now, many companies, both IT and non-IT, pay lip service to the idea of social, and that social media is the next big thing, and we love Twitter, we love Facebook, we love mobility, all of that. But many of them actually restrict their own employees from using social media at work. Why then this irony? If social media is such a big thing, why do most companies seem to need this restriction on social media itself?
Well, I think the biggest obstacle is the information security, because anything that you put onto the social media is something which goes out into the public domain, and a lot of the work that we do in our field and in our industry has a number of issues pertaining to client confidential information, to intellectual property assets, to data privacy and end customer information privacy. And that's a big inhibitor of using social media. Now, the areas where you can use social media is not only for the customer's benefit, but also for your employees. And from an employee perspective, I think companies like ours are using social media very aggressively, whether that be for recruiting or whether that be to gauge the mood of our employees and see what things we are doing well and how can we have them as highly motivated and engaged employees within the company, or how to plan for their development. That becomes really important.
One of the biggest joys of social media, and I say of this as a social media user, is the fact that it's a non-corporate voice, it's a personal voice, it's a liberal voice, it's free speech. In that sense, it's a kind of bastion of our individual rebellions against the world, where we can say what we want. Companies, however, tend to have predefined stands on various issues. They tend to be conservative. Is there a mismatch between the freedom that social media offers and corporates using it?
Yes, there's always going to be a conflict between trying to get unadulterated signals and at the same time trying to steer the direction of that dialogue
towards your corporate message,
towards corporate objectives and messages. And I think creating that balance is important, because the more freedom and flexibility you allow, the more genuine is going to be the input and the response.
How much of CEO time does this challenge occupy? This freedom between what social media offers and what your company needs to stand for in the real world?
So for us, we look at it, at a strategic policy level, and we review that periodically. It's not something which is an ongoing engagement.
Okay. All right. Let me shift focus from social media to another aspect of your business. Now, you help companies redefine their business models. You're not just an IT or ITS service provider. Like many other IT companies, you're moving up the value chain to integrate yourself into the client's business process. In this process, you might actually help them redefine their business model itself. Here's my question. If IT companies are going to be helping companies redefine their business model, what happens to traditional management consultancies like the McKinseys and the BCGs of the world? Are they under threat?
No, I don't think they are under threat. I think we both can coexist and actually be part of the ecosystem. I think the management consulting firms tend to give advice on strategy and structure, and they will lay out the framework for that. whereas IT and BPM companies go in and actually do the implementation and the execution of that advice. So frankly, both
there
can
is a
coexist.
strategy tactics division in this.
Yeah, and it's fairly complementary skill sets to each other.
Okay. Let's move to the next big theme of this conference, which is analytics. So big data is obviously touted as the next big change. What is the one thing that we're not seeing about big data? Or more precisely, what is the one thing that big CEOs are missing about big data?
So the biggest issue on big data is how you architect and structure the data management. There is so much of data that is available within an enterprise and within a company's ecosystem, but if you don't structure your data management needs in an appropriate manner, all of that is useless. So that's one big thing which which is a foundational step that needs to first be put into place before you start to use analytical models to analyze that information.
Are a lot of CEOs and leaders getting caught up in the idea of big data? Is it going to be the .com 3.0, the next big boom?
So big data is very exciting. It is something which everybody is talking about, but the actual business impact and the business benefit, I think very few companies are really being able to realize.
One of the big, fastest growing industries, ironically, in India is the fraud industry. We hear of frauds every single day at all levels of both at the corporate management side, on the ERP side, and in the customer facing retail and credit card scam kind of side. What kind of opportunities does fraud represent for companies like yours? The prevention of fraud, the management of compliance practices?
Well, I think fraud is a very big area for us. And a company like EXL can help its clients not only in terms of the identification of fraudulent patterns, so that we can anticipate fraud even before it happens, but we can also help the same client in terms of implementing certain policies and practices to prevent fraud. And then if the fraud has occurred, to actually go after the individuals that have committed the fraud to source the recovery of that fraud.
So both prevention and remediation.
Yeah, so it's actually a proactive option before the fraud happens, action during while which fraud is happening, and then also a post facto remedial action.
The years 2014 to 2018 are likely to see a huge spurt in government spending in IT. All the portents are in place. Irrespective of which government comes into power, you are going to see a big spend. How are you positioned to benefit from that?
So our business with the government sector is actually non-existent.
Like many IT companies and ITS companies in India.
We presently do not do any work in that sector. We are also not an IT services company. We are a business process management company, and therefore it really depends on whether a government agency will look to bring in our skill sets in transformation, or whether that be in analytics, or whether that be in process re-engineering, and if those are going to be important elements for them or not.
But government engagement is on the radar?
No, right now we don't have any real active plans for that.
Okay. Much is being said about what's called the VUCA environment, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity. And we talk about how leaders are managing in a VUCA environment. My question to you is a little different. How are employees managing in the VUCA environment?
Well, I think employees also have to make a number of choices, and they've got to look at it from I guess 2 or 3 different perspectives. One is from their own career perspective, as to which is the right home for them, which is the right company that's going to be able to not only navigate this kind of volatility and uncertainty, but is going to be able to thrive in these kind of situations.
Admittedly, a difficult time for employees.
It's a very difficult time for them. And the other is they need to keep abreast of what's happening in the world, so that their skills are continuously being upgraded.
All right, Mr. Kapoor, my final question for you. The top 3 blind spots that CEOs face when they engage with you, or companies like yours. 3 blind spots that you're banging your head against the wall and saying, see the writing on the wall.
Well, I would say that many times our clients will push back their decision making to the very last minute.
Okay.
And therefore, when we engage with them, they're trying to do this in a very rushed
The
manner.
crisis is already hit and
It's
then
something which we would much rather have to be done in a planned manner early on. I think the other thing we see is they try and do work with us in a piecemeal basis, rather than thinking about it in a strategic framework and putting down a robust plan on which they'd want us to implement and to execute, and therefore you have inconsistencies in terms of how that gets done. And lastly, I think one of the challenges that we face with our clients is that they do not fully comprehend the benefit of the incremental value and the business impact that we can create for them, and they tend to focus sometime only on the cost parameters, and that's something which again ends up being a suboptimal solution.
So if I were to paraphrase your final answer, it will be too little, too late, and too narrow.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it.
All right, Rohit Kapoor of EXL, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you so much.